get away, get a good job with more pay, and you're okay. Money, it's a gas. Grab that cash with both hands and make a stash. New car, caviar, 4-star daydream. I think I'll buy me a football team. Money, get back. I'm alright, Jack. Keep your hands off of my stack. Money, it's a hit. Don't give me that do good bullshit. I'm in the high fidelity first class traveling section. I think I need a Learjet. Money, it's a crime. Share it fairly, but don't take a slice of my pie. Money, so they say, is the root of all evil today. But if you ask for a prize, it's no surprise that they're giving none away. Away, 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 away.
Hello, everyone. My dog is very needy tonight. I think it's because my mom's been in town and she feeds him all kinds of things. And that's all he does now is just, can I have some?
He's adorable looking though.
He's a beautiful boy. He's a beautiful boy. And he deserves treats. Look at him. Hi, I am Chris Haden. I am the pastor at Kindred UMC.
Hey, I'm Courtney. I'm the Director of Community Engagement at Kindred UMC.
Hi, I'm Dion Gresham and I'm a guest here.
Hey! That was a formal introduction. Preston, take notes.
Yeah, we never really set the guest or the third host up because we're on staff, so we have official titles, and we never really decide what the third person's gonna be.
I should have
throw it at him.
I should have asked Preston because I know he says something different. I'd be
Every
like,
time.
this week, what should I say? What's the one-liner? I think he has a book and then he just picks one each week.
I'm Dean Grisham, and I never told my nerdy friends that I have a gaming website.
That's true. This is true.
And my nerdy friends had to find out that I have a gaming website from my not so nerdy wife.
She's pretty nerdy. She's just nerdy in a different way.
Yeah, she is.
She's like
nerdy.
she's Lord of the Rings nerdy, not like, video game.
Yeah. Well, she and I bonded over 60s pop, particularly the Beatles.
Oh
yeah.
yeah.
I feel like I'm the opposite of nerdy.
I mean, kind of.
I'm nerdy about The Bachelorette.
Yeah, you're the worst
I'm like-
kind of nerdy.
I'm like
That's
reality TV.
Like nerdy people have something redeemable about
What they're nerding
what
about?
they're into. You're like, can you believe that Luke P
I am impressed.
didn't accept Rebecca's whatever?
Wow, you even remembered a contestant's name. I'm so proud of you.
Luke P was a douche. That's all I remember.
He was a douche. You're right. He was a douche.
I just want to take a moment to point out my attire because it's not very professional.
It's worth pointing out. That's for sure.
But I have to, there's a couple of notes. One, my wife got me a Two Bears One Cave t-shirt, which is a very lovely podcast. Not suitable for children or suitable for work. Like, do not watch it. If you, well, I'm gonna get into all kinds of just like pulling from other people's material at this point. It's a good podcast. It's a good show. It's very funny. Tom Segura, Bert Kreischer. My wife got me the t-shirt. And then to pull it out, my mom, who has been making these for like 10 years off and on, she found at like some like thrift store or something, vintage Star Wars sheets.
That's pretty cool.
And then she made me pajama pants.
That's pretty awesome.
And when she started them, I was much thinner. And so she literally had to text me and be like, hey, what's your waist size
Oh
again?
my gosh.
I had to update them. And she had to add more.
That's funny.
Because people be getting fat as they get old. That's the way it goes.
It'd be like that sometimes.
And then also, my wife got me this like chair liner thing. I wish I could be massaged as I speak right now, but it's too loud.
It's very loud.
It's too loud.
It's very
Right.
loud.
But I do have the seat heater going on, and I'm happy to report it's very nice.
It's working.
It's very
I'm
nice.
really happy for you.
It's a good situation going on. How was everyone's Christmases?
It was good. It was good.
We've still got kind of Christmassy decorations because we're still technically in the Christmas season.
We're still
That's
here.
true.
Even though we're going to start a non-Christmassy series
I'm very
tonight.
excited about this next series.
I know you've been looking forward to
I'm
it.
very excited about it. But Christmas was good. We got my dog a very bougie bed. Yesterday was actually her birthday.
That adds up.
Yeah. Yeah. Yesterday was her birthday, so she got like a $40 memory foam, like
Memory foam.
padded,
You sound like how my mom treats my dog.
burrow bed. She can like burrow under it, so we got her that.
I'm like, I don't know. We got leaves outside, right? Like, I'm sure
Jonah
you're gonna
has
be
a
fine.
bed.
Jonah, every bed that Jonah has been purchased or handmade by my mother.
So we did that. We exchanged presents. We hung out. We ate food. It was great.
That's
Then
good.
I went shopping for all new clothes yesterday. And that was even better. It was fun.
Nice, nice.
Lots,
what'd you guys do?
Lots of food. We went to my parents.
Lots of food.
Well, the
That's-
best part
that's the
with
move.
yeah, it's just I go there with Tupperware because I already know, and then I get there and my mom already has stuff pre-packaged in Tupperware. It's like a switcheroo. I just give her
We do
the
that.
empty ones and take the full ones.
We started doing that for my mom because my mom, like, she lives alone now, and
Mhm.
she has, like, every time she leaves, she has like a tinfoil pan of, and because we've been pretty much on an intermittent fasting schedule, so like we don't eat lunch,
Right.
we don't eat breakfast, so like she'll eat lunch when she goes to work and stuff, but like leftovers is just not a thing.
Mm.
And so, like, we just send her home with all the leftovers.
Nice.
Like, here, you'll appreciate these far more than we will.
There it is.
So, yeah. Well, today we are starting a new series. And I've done similar things like this before in my multiple churches career and my appointments and staff positions and all that. And I've never been able to call it what I wanted to call it. I've always had to call it like Mythbusters, or I can't even remember, I can't even remember the other titles. But I've always had to settle on Mythbusters. From the get-go, what I wanted to call it was Stupid Things Christians Say.
I love that.
You had to
Stupid Things Christians
I was even
Say.
going to take it a step further, but that's great.
Oh, what were you going to say?
Stupid shit, Christians say.
one
Well,
notch.
we can say that in this particular setting.
That's true. Maybe not anywhere else.
I couldn't even say, in other settings, I could not say Stupid Things Christians Say.
That's so stupid.
It's among the. Maybe that should be the finale of the series.
Why are?
It's
Oh my god.
Stupid things we're not allowed to say.
Yeah, seriously.
No, this is Stupid Things Christians Say, and it's the essential idea is, and I should say, stupid things we've all said.
Fair.
Like, it's not, and that is the critique of, that's the other side of the argument. You know,
Right.
I want to call it Stupid Things Christians Say, and the other side of the argument is like, let's not be judgmental. Let's acknowledge. Let's come at it humbly.
Right.
Like, let's include
One
ourselves
point
in
or
it.
another, we've definitely said
Yeah.
these things.
So this is stupid things we've all said, essentially.
I really wish for this week Preston had his little cube that we could just place right here.
Oh yeah,
And hit the button.
I got Preston a Joel Osteen inspiration cube for Christmas.
Oh my god.
he pressed the button, and he's like, "For all of us have had dark times, but if we stay faithful in the Lord and we remain faithful to our giving and our tithing, then the Lord will come through for us."
I love the eyebrows on the tithing.
The practice there was just
Yeah.
top.
Yeah.
Well, and it's a good transition because we're going to start Stupid Things Christians Say. We're going to start with prosperity gospel. So before I read any scripture, first of all, let me ask: do you have any experience or knowledge, or like, does that even ring a bell for you? The idea of prosperity gospel.
Yeah, I feel like, and I'm processing aloud as I say this statement. So just throwing
You didn't
that out
prepare?
there. No, I didn't. I'm so sorry. So I feel like people hear the phrase prosperity gospel and get very hung up on like money, and it doesn't necessarily always have to be money. Like it can certainly
That's an
be
excellent
money.
point, and we will be talking
It
about
can
that. I
certainly
completely
be
agree with
money,
you.
but it's not always money. It's more about like a give and take, like, and not even like you give to take.
Yeah, I've actually, that's one of the things I've been wrestling with all week.
Yeah.
Is like how do we really get at what it really is? And the word that works for me that I've settled on is transaction.
Yes, that's the word I was looking for, but couldn't find.
That's what I think defines for me as I start to engage like the idea of it. That's what it comes out to.
And the thing that gets me particularly enraged about prosperity gospel. Enraged. That's a word I used very intentionally. Enraged about it is that people will post these stupid minute-long clips on Instagram of their big box pastors going
Name
on.
names. Go ahead, call them out. Right
I don't remember the one dude's name that particularly.
Oh no, I
pissed
was thinking of people we know.
Oh yeah.
I thought you were talking about.
That, you know what? That would be a great example.
Do not name names, by the way. That's not what we're about.
But like they'll post these 1 minute little video clips of their person saying things like, you know, like if you read the Bible, God will filter out your anger. If you look to Jesus, then he will tell you, I don't care about your feelings. And it's like stupid stuff like that gets spread around.
Which I do not believe.
Right.
Just so we know.
But then people will share that across all their platforms, and that's what people see about Christianity.
So one of the things we're going to talk about, so just be ready. I'm going to ask you. One of the things I want to ask and really get into is like, and I don't want to, we'll save it for later, but
sure.
like, one of the things is, what is actually attractive about that?
Okay.
Because there's a thing that people, there's a need that's being, or at least,
sure.
or at least a want. There's an itch that's being scratched in that. Because it's not like these people are just like stupid assholes. Like that's not what's going on.
No, they're not trying to like cause harm.
There's a whole segment of the population who are really genuinely, sincerely, and we should, I'm if nothing else, I'm a person who really values sincerity. And there's a lot of people who are sincerely striving and trying to get at like real faith, who arrive at very different conclusions than me. Like very different. And in their honest assessment of reality, I'm going like, we can't agree on the basics. Like, and so I don't want to get, I understand, like I'm with you in the, like, it is infuriating to me. And that is a thing that I often am like working on as I talk about these things.
Right.
But I do want to acknowledge, like, it is important to come at this humbly.
Right.
Because it's so easy to be like, well, you dumb, stupid piece. Like, it's so easy to
I
get
come
in
at
that
it angry because I used to share these kinds of videos and
well,
stuff too in high school.
We'll
So,
get into
like,
that too. Like,
I get it, and
we
that's
hate in
part of
others
the-
what we see in ourselves is a piece of this.
Yeah.
That's a part of it.
I've got thoughts, but also I feel like the other side of the coin for that whole thing is that people who are not in the church, hurt by the church, want nothing to do with the church or a different religion, see these things that get posted around, and it pushes them farther away. And paints a picture of Christianity. That is definitely one of my... That's what makes me infuriated about it. And I think it's because my circle shifted from being largely just other Christian people to being largely hurt by the church, non-Christian, non-religious people. So we'll talk about that later. Yeah. But that's where I come from when I hear those words.
I kind of agree and disagree with that. So this is interesting to me because prior to us really doing this, when I thought about prosperity gospel, there was more monetary stuff.
Sorry, hold on. You have a green light that's like right on your face.
Yeah, get rid of that light.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it is like right on your eye.
Oh no! Oh god.
Probably because when I was looking this way.
Wrong button. Wrong button. Okay. There we go. All right. Okay.
Are we
Now
good?
it's not on your face anymore.
Okay.
You've done it. Well, now it is. All right. Okay.
Well, now it's fine.
All right. It's fine.
Okay. I'll just be like this.
Yeah. There you go. This is your audience, right?
Right. No, so yeah, a lot of the times when I thought about prosperity gospel, it was more monetary, because those are probably more the experiences I dealt with, is just seeing that kind of flat out of like making sure you're just giving money, and not just for tithing reasons, but because of the transactional part of like, being saved in a certain way. But so I think that it does. So in some way it does deter people, right? Especially from some of those aspects. But I think if it's transactional in the just be positive and those type of aspects to being saved, I think some people are going in thinking that's exactly what it is, and that may be drawing people in, even though that's, arguably not the real foundations for things. Because it depends on what the transaction is what I'm trying to say.
It's important to say that the arguably word, it gets passed over, but arguably is an important word.
Yeah.
Like that's part of the coming at this humbly. Like I don't want to. It's so easy for me to get worked up into a place of superiority,
right?
And that is the exact opposite of what we are called to do and be. And yet, this is one of those issues where I am particularly vulnerable to that.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's definitely, especially lately, been a soft spot.
So let me just say, there might be people out there who are like, prosperity gospel, never heard of it. What is it? I don't even know what you're talking about. So let's just do a basic breakdown. Now, I always like to say this, and it's like, I am not a subscriber to this particular faith. So like, you would be better off if you are really curious about it. You'd be much better off asking somebody else. So let me just confess that I'm an outsider who's trying to describe something from the outside. Again, humbly. So as best I can tell, prosperity gospel is ultimately about the idea that if you are faithful to God and you name and you have enough faith to like claim as if a gift has already been given, if you believe in God enough to act as though God is actually going to do what you want God to do, then God will reward that level of faith with, and all kind, you can fill in the blank, prosperity, particularly, it gets categorized as money. So it's like, if I can't pay my electric bill, but I just walk around certain that the money to pay my electric bill is coming somehow, I don't know how, I don't know why, I don't know when, but I know that God's not going to let me down, then that will come. Then that is going to happen. And so like other phrases are like name it and claim it. Health and prosperity is...
There were the infomercials for the holy water.
Well, so those are the most kind of corrupt exaggerations of it, for sure. So now let's go into the wider spread. It's not always just about money.
Right.
Often it can be like about health. Often it can be about like how you feel.
Yeah.
Like good feelings or bad feelings. things.
That's the type that I get particularly.
And there's a lot of overlap in that. And in fact, as I've looked at what we're going to be talking about over the next several weeks, one of the common things comes down to me, the misconception that a faith in God is ultimately about feeling good rather than feeling bad. That the reason you have faith is so that you can feel good, not bad. And when we get into that place, it seems like it's, I understand, like it seems on its face like a reasonable, oh yeah, that's why you would have faith, because it makes you feel good. When we do that, it goes against a lot of what Jesus talks about, and the Old Testament, by the way, also, and the prophets, yada, yada. But two, it somehow robs people of the depth of what is actually happening in existence. Like there's a deeper, more real, more meaningful, more satisfying reality that is available to all of us. Jesus calls it the kingdom of heaven or the kingdom of God. And it's not about feeling happy all the time or being taken care of all the time. In fact, a lot of the kingdom of God involves lamenting, mourning, suffering, being hungry, being thirsty. Like these are elements of God's kingdom. And that's my biggest critique of prosperity gospel is you're missing the depth that is actually available to all of us because you're still caught up on trying to feel good all the time. And like that's the behavior of an addict. An addict wants to feel good all the time. A healthy person grieves and mourns when bad things happen.
Right.
Like, and that's my biggest critique. So, all right. So, in order to talk, like, let's not just pontificate. Let's ground ourselves in Scripture. Let's take a look at one of the scriptures that is often used in prosperity gospel. It's Jeremiah 29:11. And we're going to look at the broader thing, but let's just start with that one verse. So Jeremiah 29:11.
I already know the verse because I had to memorize it in high school.
Right. Well, it's a go-to verse, and it can be helpful. But, you know. So we're going to be looking. I'm reading from the NRSV. Text will be down at the bottom. Also, we're not just going to read the one verse. We're going to read more than that, but I'm going to start with the one verse. So it's 29:11. Go down to the bottom if you want to read it. Find 11. You with me? All right. Okay. Okay. 29:11. I don't even know why I'm reading it because I know it. For surely I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord Yahweh. Says Yahweh, plans for your welfare and not for harm, to give you a future with hope. Now that sounds awesome. Other translations would also say plans for you to prosper. And that's literally prosperity, prosper. Like the root word of prosperity is prosper.
The version I had to memorize, they had like a little song, and it was like, for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you.
Yes.
To give you hope in a future.
So having studied Hebrew, I can affirm that there's not like a translation issue here. All of those are kind of reliable. Like they're getting at this. Like there's nothing way off here. You know.
Right.
Sometimes there are things where like the English translation is like the virgin thing that we talked about.
Yeah.
Like virgin in modern day English means she hasn't had sex. Virgin back then, in 2,000 years ago in Greek culture and Hebrew culture, it meant she was a young girl. That's a very drastic, different meaning in the verses. This isn't, as far as I can tell, as best as I can tell, that's not what's going on here. It's generally speaking, this is what God is like, I have plans for you to prosper and do well and not to harm you. Trust me is kind of what's going on. Now, let's go back and look at the context of what's going on here. Okay, so first of all, the book of Jeremiah, it's split up into multiple sections. This is this particular section is one letter that the prophet Jeremiah has written to what's called the diaspora. Now, this is a weird historical thing. Israel was conquered by Assyria and then Babylon later. When Babylon conquered Israel, they had a practice where they would literally pull all of the people, the conquered people from the city that they were conquering. They would make them move to Babylon, to their hometown, so that within a generation or two, they would be basically gentrified into Babylonian culture, and you would eradicate an enemy that way. So it was like, and it's a little bit like you think about Native American people, or here's an actual real historic example: England and Scotland. The English rulers instituted something called prima nocta, which means that when a Scottish woman was married, the English lord who owned the land would get to sleep with her the first night. And there's this nefarious, just fucking brutal line in the movie Braveheart, where Richard the Lionheart, I think, he says, if we can't fight them out, then we'll breed them out. And it's this nefarious, it's gentrification by means of rape, you know? And like, there's something, it's not quite as aggressive as that, but there's something very similar going on with the diaspora. They are forced to move to Babylon so that they will become Babylonians culturally.
I see.
They might always look different, and you might always be able to tell who a fucking Jew is. And that's kind of what it was. So they're always second class, like it's not a good situation.
Yeah.
But they can't when you grow up in a place, that's home now. That is home now. And that's what happened to the Jews who were exiled from Jerusalem and Israel into Babylon. Jeremiah, the book we're reading from, Jeremiah is a prophet who he and a few others remained in Jerusalem. And he's writing to Babylon, to the Jews in Babylon, about their exile.
Oh.
He's writing to them. So this is like a hopeless, and there's so many cultural elements going on here too. Jerusalem, and the temple specifically in Jerusalem, was where the tabernacle lived. That was where God and humanity coexisted. And that was I know it's kind of like, that's not really a new idea or that meaningful to us now. Thousands of years ago, we're talking maybe 3,000 years ago, somewhere around there. That was a huge revolutionary new idea that a God would want to dwell with his people. Because gods live on mountains. Gods live off in the clouds, man. They don't give a fuck about you. You exist to serve them. And the idea that this was a God who created all of it, created the mountains, created the seas, created the clouds, created all the things that we think these other gods live on. He created all of it, everything. And he wants to coexist with his people. He wants to come down humbly and be with his people. This is a radical new idea. It's radical. And that's what that's why Israel always considered itself special and unique, and that this is the covenant and the promise that is unique to Israel. They always considered this as this God wants to be with us. Yeah. It's a unique, special thing. And then Assyria and Babylon come. And they're like, get the fuck out of here, you weak pieces of shit. You don't commune with a God here. And so it's not just they've lost their home. They've lost their identity.
Yeah.
They've
Right.
lost
Yeah.
everything about who they are and why they're special and their place in the world. They've lost everything. And Jeremiah, and this is generations long. Like the exile lasted for generations. It's not like you were born, you were exiled, and then eventually you came back. No. You were born, you were exiled, and then you fucking die. And then your children and your children and your children. Like generations of exile, you know?
Right.
Like that's what this is. And Jeremiah, because of weird happenstance, stays back in Jerusalem with a remnant. And he's writing to the diaspora, the people who have been
Everybody else
exiled,
in there.
who have lost everything. And this is what he writes to them. We're going to pick it up at 29. We're going to read the whole chapter because it's pretty cool. I'm going to skip over some of the, because there's a lot of names and history in it. I just gave you all of the names and history that you need. So 29 verse 1. These are the words of the letter that the prophet Jeremiah sent from Jerusalem to the remaining elders among the exiles and to the priests, the prophets, and the people whom Nebuchadnezzar had taken into exile from Jerusalem to Babylon. This was after King Jeconiah and the queen mother, the court officials, and yada, yada, yada. This is just establishing, this is a real historical event. There are some stories in scripture where that isn't happening, where they're telling a story. This is a real historical event, and you can tell because they're literally listing dates and times and names and people.
Right.
Like, this fucking happened. This is a letter that we actually have that Jeremiah wrote to his people. This is the real deal here. So, okay. We're going to pick up at verse 4. Thus says the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, and to all the exiles whom I have sent into exile from Jerusalem to Babylon. So he's talking to the exiles, to the diaspora. God directly. That's the role of the prophet, to be the voice of God. Build houses and live in them. Plant gardens and eat what they produce. Take wives and have sons and daughters. Take wives for your sons and give your daughters in marriage, that they may bear sons and daughters. Multiply there and do not decrease, but seek the welfare of the city where I have sent you into exile, and pray to Yahweh on its behalf, for in its welfare you will find your welfare. For thus says the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, do not let the prophets and the diviners who are among you deceive you, and do not listen to the dreams that they dream, for it is a lie that they are prophesying to you in my name. I did not send them, says Yahweh. For thus says Yahweh, only when Babylon's 70 years are completed will I visit you, and I will fulfill to you my promise and bring you back to this place. For surely I know the plans I have for you, says Yahweh, plans for your welfare and not for your harm, to give you a future with hope. There's a lot more bite in this text than what is presented by the prosperity gospel.
Yeah.
This is a God who has sent Babylon to Jerusalem to exile his people because of their behavior. And he's saying, like, hey, get used to it over there. Take wives, plant crops, build houses. You're going to be there a while. And not until the 70 years of your payment is done will I come back and visit you again. It's this, like, much harsher, much more direct God than we want to acknowledge in particularly in the prosperity gospel. This idea that God's just like, hey man, what do you need?
Yeah.
Why don't you just smile and have good posture and then everything's going to work out? It's like, nah, it doesn't work that way. Like, this is a God who's like, my plans for your prosperity are 70 years long, and that's fucking short by my measure. Like, this is a God who's like, no. I'm not going to abandon you, but you won't see me for a while. Like, it's a much more direct, more hostile, like, And the reason I bring it up is because I actually did a little Google search on like, okay, what are the prosperity gospel like texts? Like what I really want to understand it. Let me come at it humbly. Like I want to really understand it. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they've got something here. Everything that I read was an example of this. Like they snapped one little verse and were like, that sounds like something I like. And they didn't bother to look at the story. It's like, are you kidding me? This is a letter written to the exiles. This is a letter written to people who have been essentially exiled by God for 70 years. So that when they finally have paid their penance, then God will visit them and hear their prayers again. Like, that's some cold shit. Now I would also, I think it's important that we filter that theology through. So, all right, okay, where do I want to go with this? So to me, this ultimately comes down to literalist versus not literalist.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where I always have a kind of a disagreement with people whom I love, who I've talked to, who have a much more literal interpretation of Scripture. Like, I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you reconcile what we just read with some of the things that Jesus later says, and some of the things that then the epistles say, and some of the things that were said earlier in Genesis. Like, they all seem against each other. I don't know how you do it. And in order, in my opinion, it seems to me that in order to be a strong literalist interpreter of Scripture, the only way you can do that is to cherry pick some verses and then just ignore the rest. And so I think this is an invitation towards integration. Okay, I felt like you were going to say something.
No, I'm just kind of processing it all, honestly, because it's like I'm trying to look at it from the other side. And again, I'm not super familiar with what someone who's into prosperity gospel would
name it,
say.
claim it kind of stuff.
It's just I'm trying to gauge if that perspective is just trying to, and you kind of talked about this and kind of the addict nature of it. Like, is it just that there's, it's easier to sell comfort and warmth in something that's more obtainable without having to give somebody things that deal with sacrifice and pain and all of those things? Because when you first mentioned this to me, the first thing that went into my mind was actually something I learned in college way back was indulgences with the Catholic Church and getting out of purgatory by essentially really kind of buying your way out of that, right? And you can do it for your loved ones as well.
People might not know.
Yeah.
So indulgences. So the Catholic faith, there's heaven. When you die, you go to heaven or hell or purgatory, which is a middle place. And the Catholic Church, after someone died, would sell an indulgence to a family, which was basically the Catholic Church saying that person can go from purgatory to heaven.
Right.
After they've died, we'll sell you a certain paper that guarantees that person has moved from purgatory to heaven.
And then I read somewhere in the later 1400s, they've kind of amended that to you could do it for yourself too, for your future sins. And so, that's, where I'm going with that is it's easier for someone to take that, I can pay my way. I can do that. I can be positive. I can do that because that's a more comforting thing than dealing with loss, and having to deal with that personally, dealing with suffering and all that
What you're
stuff.
describing feels very I'm in control of the situation, whereas the other no, you're not in control at all.
And that's kind of the point.
Right.
Right.
The in control mentality seems to be easier for people to grasp
right.
onto than to realize oh shit, I have no control over that.
It feels easier.
Yes.
It feels better. It like nobody, hardly any, well, I don't say nobody. There are certainly people who enjoy feeling not in control. Most people not only don't enjoy it, but they detest it. Mm-hmm. They hate the feeling of being not in control. And yet, it's really hard to do even a cursory glance at Scripture without coming to the conclusion that the main thrust of faith is you're not in control.
I think that's where the cherry picking comes from.
Yeah.
I think the cherry picking comes from, it's a way to like logic into people's heads. And again, including my own. At one point, like, oh, like if I read this one verse and do these things, and I can do this and get my way into heaven, and everything's fine and dandy, and I don't have to feel bad.
So there's another angle too that I want to talk about. So like we've kind of, so one of the questions I proposed to ask that you guys seem to have already gotten into, which is like, what is actually attractive about this?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Even though it objectively doesn't work. Like you can measure it. It doesn't work.
Yep.
It like if you follow the steps that Joel Osteen has for you, it leads to depression and poverty. Like it does. It really does. So that begs the question, what's in it? And I think you're touching on it. Like, well, it's a sense of control. Mm-hmm. And it's a sense, it's even though things are spinning, like you're in a tailspin, if you don't think you can get out of the tailspin, if you like, it's much easier to just like, la 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 la, I'm not in a tailspin. Yeah. Like there's something in that.
It's also a way for people to like be close and know God without actually having to be in it with. And
well, yeah, you don't have to be vulnerable. You don't have
right.
to actually be vulnerable. You can just.
I can let go and God's got me.
Yeah, I give it up, you know. And there's something about that that's like, have you given it? It doesn't seem to me like it feels to me like you're just ignoring how much it hurt you that your dad cheated on your mom. That's what it feels like to me. Right. It feels like you're not really doing any type of like recognition of what's really going on. And like I remember when I first started walking down this path, that has ultimately led me to this congregation, you know? And when I first started taking my initial steps down that road, I knew I worked for a church. I knew that I couldn't like be at a Bible study at that church because I was a worship leader. Like I was a local celebrity, like everyone knew me, and I was a ministerial candidate. I was going to be like, and you just can't be in a Bible study and be vulnerable with a bunch of people who are like, you're up on stage every week, you know? Like there's just something about it. So I went to like kind of a bigger church down the road in Tampa, and I just kind of was like joined in this young adult group, and I remember the night that I suddenly realized, like, you guys cannot handle me. Like, and I can't remember how it came up. But they were all talking about, you know, just like kind of Christianese kind of stuff. And it was a middle of the line Methodist church, so it wasn't like hardcore prosperity gospel, but there was something in the air that was like, it was along the lines of like, well, you know, if you just do good, then God's going to be good to you. And I was like, that sounds like prosperity gospel to me. And so I was frustrated, granted, and I had some edge, and I own that. Like, but I basically was like, all right, here's what we really believe. I know women who have been sexually assaulted by adults when they were children. And I've seen them. They're adults and they're still struggling. Like this is a painful, real thing for them every fucking day. Here's what we believe. When that happened, God was in the room, knew it was happening, had the power to stop it, and did not stop it. What's going on here? Mm-hmm. And they were like, and they just, they had no idea what to do with it. And I remember the moment clicking in for me. I was like, I've ruined the group. This is way too much for you guys. Like, and I just didn't go back because I was like, this group cannot deal with. But I've ever since then, I have been searching for a theology that somehow, I don't like not make sense because it's senseless.
Right.
Anything like that is senseless. It doesn't make sense. It's completely horrifying. But something that can at least peacefully reconcile a relationship with a grace that is inherent, that I really do think is inherent in creation. I do think there is something graceful. There's something like ultimately loving and like moving towards life, transforms darkness into light, transforms death into life. Like I think that is just inherently programmed into existence. I really do believe that. And for no other reason than I feel it strongly and that I've benefited from it. But reconciling those two realities is an impossibility.
Yeah, you're taking one without the other.
Yeah, it's like, oh.
Yeah.
And my biggest infuriating frustration with prosperity gospel is that it just completely ignores that question.
It doesn't, yeah.
It's just like, and like, I think my biggest problem with the idea of a prosperity gospel is that it's kind of going to people who have suffered any type of real significant trauma or abuse or negative, like anything where they feel like God let them down. And it's just like, hey, buckaroo, don't feel that way. Like,
God's got you.
Yeah, it's like, what? Like, no. And also, I would add to that, my most prolific transformative experiences have come from me going to God with that and going like, you fucking let me down.
Right.
Like, you completely failed to be the God that I needed you to be. And even though that sounds blasphemous, what I actually found in those moments was a grace and a like this, again, this force in existence that is moving people from trauma into healing, from life into death, from darkness into light, or from death into life. I mean, like this force that is moving things forward, but it's not. It doesn't come cheaply.
Right.
Like it's not. It comes at great pain and vulnerability and like willingness to feel what it is to be alive. And like it's harder than this prosperity gospel message seems to like paint it out to be, you know?
Yeah, I think people are just trying to simplify it as much as possible and make it as easy as possible because, again, there's control versus not control.
And most people think that having control, I think it comes down to pain. I think it's pain avoidance more than anything else.
Yeah, it's definitely a big avoidance culture for sure.
And then also, I would say like that, and the worst practitioners of prosperity gospel are people who, like, let's just acknowledge a genetic lottery. Let's just acknowledge that you're born, like, some people are born more attractive than others. Some people are born stupider than others. Some, like, that's just the way it goes. And if you hit a genetic lottery that is equal parts, I'm inheriting something that's established, and I've just got that kind of look and that kind of talk and that kind of thing that just kind of works for some people. And when you combine those two together, and I don't even mean to be like judgmental again, like I do not care for Joel Osteen. I think his theology is very flawed. I'm not sure he's not doing his best. I don't get I wouldn't be surprised to find out that when he goes backstage, he's like, what the fuck was that? I don't even understand what these people are even like. Or the opposite, where he goes backstage and he's like, God was really with me that time. Like, I think I really helped people. Like, I don't know which it is. Or if it's in between or what, you know? Like, so I don't want to throw other individuals under the bus and be like, I know what's real and you don't. Like, that's not true at all. I don't fucking know what's real. I'm doing my best just like the rest of us. But there is something that's very damaging about that theology, I think, that either is being ignored or at the very least is just not being seen.
I think too with a lot of prosperity gospel culture, it allows people to lean really heavily into their coping mechanisms. And those coping mechanisms
Keeps you trapped.
Yeah.
You're like stuck in a circle that you can't get out of.
And those while coping mechanisms in certain circumstances, obviously if you're in an abusive situation,
during trauma, they're really useful.
very helpful.
Yeah.
But because it keeps you trapped in those behaviors and
Like
those
when somebody
patterns,
attacks you and all of a sudden you don't feel feelings anymore and you just have this sense of get out of here or attack the attacker or that's great. That helps us survive.
But in regular
When you carry
everyday
that
real
with
life,
you for the rest of your life,
then you're
that's a
teetering
problem.
on a bridge between causing harm and avoidance or just causing hurt.
And being again, I'll speak for myself because I was trapped in coping.
For sure, me too.
It's the feeling of trapped. It's the feeling of can't escape. I can identify it. I can see what's going on.
I know what I'm doing when I'm doing it.
And the example I always use is so for me, desperation was a big particularly with women. Desperation, and it's there's nothing like sending 6 texts, knowing that the 7th text is only going to make it so much worse and not being able to stop yourself from sending the 7th text. That was my trapped feeling.
Yeah.
It's and sending and being what are you doing, you dumb shit? What are you doing? You know this is not how to get what you want. What are you doing? And not being able to stop myself from doing it.
Yeah.
And that's the behavior of an addict.
Yeah, and it's that addictive, it's the ability to avoid, it's the ability to have control. It feels almost powerful sometimes.
Yeah.
I think all of those things make that culture very attractive. And to be honest, a lot of what we do and what a lot of people who aren't into prosperity gospel, it kind of almost, if you're coming from here to here, it might seem unattractive to you because what we're doing is not encouraging you to lean into coping mechanisms.
Right.
We're acknowledging that you don't have any power or any control.
It feels very dangerous.
Yeah, risky for sure.
Yeah, it feels dangerous to walk into places where you're going you want me to just talk about the abuse.
Right.
You want me to just talk about it. How is that going to help? I don't know how, but I can promise you it does. Yeah, right. Get over yourself. I'm out. And I completely understand. I understand how that can look.
Mm-hmm.
But I also, having been on the other side of it and having seen it happen for I don't know, dozens of people, no. Just talking about it and
really helps.
And then discovering that nobody's fled the room.
Mm-hmm.
That you talking about it and probably crying and probably making a mess up and not making complete coherent sense because you're processing out loud and and then to discover that nobody's left the room, nobody thinks any worse of you, nobody has any weird oh God, I didn't know you were one of those. Nobody has any everyone's just yeah man, fucking abuse sucks. Yours is different from mine, but God, it sounds terrible. And then realizing that, there is, not to get too preachy here, but that is the reason we do things that way is because that is how Jesus is described in the 4 Gospels. That's Jesus' superpower. It's his profound ability to know what he's about. So when he encounters people's stories, he's not shaken or afraid or he's not, because he knows what he's about. And so somebody's oh yeah? Well, I've got a male slave back at my house who I fuck on the regular. Are you gonna, which is lost in the translation, but I swear to God, that's in the Gospels. There's a Roman soldier who's can you heal my manservant? And it's can you heal my fuck buddy? And Jesus, he does. He does it. And it's because he knows what he's about. And he's well, I'm not going to get distracted by this whole Like, let's prioritize here. First things first. Life. Your life and faith. Your servant's going to be healed. You know, like first and foremost.
Right.
Like, he just knows what he's about. And he does that over and over again when people bring complicated issues to him that they're trying to trap him. And he just knows what he's about. And he's like, well, I got something for you. And then he asks them a question. They're like, Like, that's what Jesus knows what he's about. And that provides him with the superpower to be in people's trauma and abuse. Mm-hmm. And like the woman at the well, which is, we've talked about, like this idea that this woman who has been just utterly shamed and ostracized by her culture because she's had multiple men, and like because she's a Samaritan, and now she's dealing with this rabbi, and rabbis and Samaritans are like, you do not fucking talk to a rabbi if you're a Samaritan. And this rabbi who's like, hey, what's up? Like, I know you sleep around. Like, how about this? This is going to be the moment that you remember for the rest of your life, because I'm going to give you water that makes you never thirst again. Mm-hmm. Like, and I'm talking about the Messiah rescue spiritual water. Like, that's what I'm talking about. And she's like, me? And she runs back and tells her whole tribe. You know, like it's all of these encounters. And again, like I know it's a weird leap, but to me that is the opposite of the prosperity gospel. It is the like profound willingness to be vulnerable and listen and receive and be in the mud, be in the messiness of it, and not have a clean answer for like, well, I don't know what to tell you. You married multiple men, so I guess you're fucked. Yeah. Like, but instead to be like, no. I know what the law is. Let's talk about what humanity is. Let's talk about what the kingdom of heaven is. The kingdom of heaven is people who worship in spirit and truth, and I'll give you water that will make you never thirst again. That's kingdom of heaven. And it's like what? That, like anybody who listens to it is like, that, I want that. That's way better than this other bullshit. Yeah. Like, I don't want that other stuff. I want this. Like, this is where it's at. And like, so yeah, like my biggest frustration with the prosperity gospel is that it's missing out on the depth of what humans really need out of the kingdom of heaven. I think it keeps people out of heaven. And I don't mean like when you die you go to heaven. I mean like the heaven that's here and now, where we can all really be with each other. We can all actually love each other. We can all actually listen to each other and learn from each other and forgive each other when we fuck up, and be in this community that actually together we like rise to something more than we could ever be on our own. Like kingdom of heaven, you know? And like prosperity gospel just kind of keeps us all out of that. Like it locks us out.
I think the thing that I've kind of been like spinning my wheels on, and again, I'm processing out loud as I talk, but what's fascinating to me is that when we talk about, at least in my own life, when I think about all the quote-unquote Christian people that I know, prosperity gospel culture is what's super attractive, and then they look at this kind of stuff, the stuff that we do, and the ways that we do it, and yes, I'm going to throw it, like it's unconventional, and it's rowdy, and it's different. But they look at that and they're like,
we say the fuck word. Yeah,
they're like, I'm good. I want no part of that. You guys are sinning. You guys are doing wrong. I'm going to stay over here and I'm going to do this. But then when you look at, again, the other circle, the circle of people that I know that aren't super involved in the church, aren't super religious, or maybe are but don't go to typical Sunday morning church, it's the opposite. It's they look at what we're doing, they're bought in, they're like, heck yes, let's go. And then they see the prosperity gospel nonsense over here, and they're like, fuck that, I don't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole. So I think, like, for me, like, what is it that keeps Christian people out of this other side? And, you know, like, that's the question that I'm stewing on. Because I feel like there's so much good.
It's also, I'll join you in it. I've spent maybe my entire adult life asking that same question too.
Yeah, that's the question I've been like.
I mean, do you think part of it though is just, you know, there's a part of it that you're seeking a different type of answer, right, in both of those avenues, right? So, one method is, how can I be saved, right? And it's probably a little bit, it's lighter in the sense of I can either give this, I can transact with this, and I can just do this, I can live my day-to-day life, but just know that, yep, I'm doing the things that I need to do, and, I'm going to be saved, versus a different avenue of answers where you're seeking with something of more trouble, of like, I'm reading this, why is God doing, he seems pissed here, what's that, like, there's a different type of
hard.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard. And I think that, people that seek this group tend to have, gone to churches and they're kind of looking for that type of answer where I can go, the things that sound more blasphemous and trying to understand, why the hell did God do this in this context, right? Like you're seeking a different answer than, let me just,
There's like a bite down on an acceptance of. So like I think people who tend towards the more Christianese kind of approach, they avoid the difficulty of it.
Right.
Like
Okay.
they're much more willing to ignore. It's that Bible study that I went to with the young adult group where I was like, this is what we know about God for sure.
Yeah.
This is 100%. There's no getting away from these facts. Like, we know that people are tortured and that God's in the room when it happens. That's what we believe. Like, and that those people are like, I don't want to fucking live in that world.
Yep.
But they're also like, well, but I'm not going to kill myself.
Right.
So I'll just kill that piece of myself that knows that reality. Like, I think there's something to that, and that is where if you perceive judgment from me, because there is certainly it is in me.
Yeah.
That is the judgment that I have. That is the like if I could give an unempathetic voice to my just complete and total disgust with it. If I could just give voice to that part of me for a second, it would be like, you fucking coward.
Mm-hmm.
You fucking coward. You can't fucking look at reality, you fucking weak little coward. Look at it. Look at it, you coward. Look at it. Like, you want to know God? Look him in the face. Look at him. Like, this is God. Like, now, I happen to have been through that and have discovered God to be, at least for me, a gracious and loving being in the midst of the complexities and the heinousness of existence. Like, I have found, I've gotten kind of on the other end of that and found that, like, oh God, I like, for me, there is actually a humility in the, like, I don't understand.
Right.
I don't understand. But you can't say that to somebody who's suffered a serious loss. You can't be like, hey, you don't understand. God's bigger than that. Like, fuck you. Get the fuck out of my face. Like, that's not what I need. Like, but I think in my experience, what is really helpful is the permission for people to come to God with the reality of who they are and where they are, and not have to put on a happy face, sit up and have good posture, have a nice smile, and God will work everything out. Like, as long as if you send me $69.99 in a money order, like that shit, which is detrimental to faith, I think. But instead, like, an invitation into, no. Bring all of who you are to God, even the parts that you don't think he can take, or that you think are blasphemous, or that you think are, fill in the blank, whatever your word is. And then also there's something about, again, the work we do here, there's something about, like, and I'll go with you. I've been there before. I'll come with me. Take my hand. I'll go with you. Like, I've met him before, and I've talked to him this way before. I promise you're okay. Like, come with me. Let's do it together. Let's really get at the root of this together. And then finding God in the midst of the messy, brutal reality of existence has a much more life-giving, faith-imbuing, that's again, like, what does it take to make a man go willingly to a crucifixion?
Right.
Like it takes a pretty serious depth of understanding about who he is, what he's about, why he's doing what he's doing, what's going to happen afterwards, like where his ultimate meaning lies, where it's just all of this, all the things that I'm like, this is what I want from life. I want to be a man who knows what he's about, would die for his friends, understands what the meaning of real true love and friendship is, has the ability to grieve and mourn when his friends let him down, but without disconnecting. Like stay connected to your friends even when they're letting you down. Like the ability to address people who have power over you with grace and also wit and like subversion. And like these, like when I look at all the things that are going on in the crucifixion, I'm like, well, I'll be goddamned if that's not exactly the man I want to be.
Right.
Like, but that doesn't come from send $69.99, smile and have good posture.
That's a harder path, right?
It's
that's
a
a
much
harder path.
Yeah, and it takes a lifetime to get. I mean, it takes a practice of surrender.
Yeah.
Like it takes like things that don't come naturally to us. It takes moments of silence. Bless you.
Thank you. Sorry.
It takes moments of like being still with yourself and being like, oh, these are my thoughts. Like I'm not proud of these thoughts. But here they are. Here we are with them. God's here too, and here we all are. There they are. Look at them. Like these are not my proudest moments here. What are we gonna do here? And like that's hard work. It's really hard work. But again, like it's far more rewarding. It's far better. It's a way better way to live and exist than like having a helicopter. You know, like I can fly to New York anytime I want. Like, well,
Good for you.
I can be alone in my own skin. I can sit and be quiet. How about that? Can you?
Well, people are scared of quiet.
Yeah, right.
Like,
Yeah.
people run away from that.
And there was a time when I couldn't. There was definitely a time when I couldn't, but I can now. I can do it and I can enjoy it and I can like be happy in it. It's like, and that's far more powerful than any prosperity gospel.
Do you think that most Christians today follow the prosperity gospel path versus the other, just in terms of, I mean, popularity?
Yeah,
and
well,
all
it's
that
also
stuff?
it's a blend.
Yeah.
It's a spectrum. You know, like I never really got a strong prosperity gospel message from the church that I went to.
Yeah.
But there are elements that just can't help but seep into kind of capitalistic.
Yeah. Well, I'll say that because
Americanized
those tend to
Christian
be
church.
usually like mega churches, right? And like that's kind of where that follows in.
I think more and more that's what we're going to see because the mega church. I think more and more people are seeing through the modernized Christian theology, which is actually really shallow and flat. And that's why the church is in a crisis. It can't get people to involve themselves in the church because there's nothing for them there.
Yeah.
Right.
But the one thing that can do that is prosperity gospel stuff. And it's like, you know, like a really great rock band and like a handsome, sexy pastor who can tell a good story. And there's a certain amount of population who are like, I know I'm supposed to go to church, but I just hate it. And if you can make that into something that makes them feel good, it's like, I don't mind going to church now. And I think that's winning the day. I think that's what's succeeding mostly.
Yep.
And then you start to talk to those people and you're like, hey, well, tell me about your relationship with God. And they're like, Jesus. That's not an answer.
Jesus what?
That's not an answer. What are you talking about? And then you start pressing in, like, well, how do you, I mean, like, tell me about your life. Oh, you know, I'm just happy God's so good and God, like, we might as well be talking about the weather at this point. Like,
Football
there's
and the
nothing
weather.
here. Yeah, there's nothing here. What's going on? Like, tell me for real. And then if you can get them into a place where they really talk for real, they're like, well, I don't know. I'm worried about my daughter. She seems to be hanging around with the crowd. I think she's doing drugs. And I'm not really sure what to do about it. It's like, oh, there you are.
There it is.
Like, I found you. There you are. Let's talk. Let's why don't we have coffee? can I meet your daughter? Can we how do we support you? How do we come around you? How do we be a community together? And we're like, what? Well, we just have to pray. I'm just going to lift her up to God and have it. And well, there are things we can do. There are, I'm not taking away the idea of prayer as a valuable thing, but I am saying I think there's something powerful about cooperating with what you think God is actually doing. You have to cooperate with what God's doing. I don't think it's enough to passively, well, I'm just gonna sit on this couch and hopefully it'll work out.
Right.
What are you doing? Fucking get in there. Get in there. Talk. Be vulnerable. Find solutions. Cooperate. Agonize in prayer. If you're gonna be in prayer, then agonize in prayer. This is a sad, dangerous thing that you're dealing with here. Let's do it. Let's get in there. Invite friends that you can trust into that process too. Let's talk about it. Let's lament. Let's grieve. Let's mourn. Let's celebrate. Let's worship. Let's share meals. Let's do it, man. I'm not interested in this weird kingdom of heaven shit that's way far off on a cloud somewhere. I want it here and now. This is the only thing I know that exists for real is here and now. I want heaven now, and that's what Jesus promises. He promises kingdom of heaven here and now, and that's what I fucking want. So let's do it. Let's stop pretending it's some weird thing that we're gonna earn someday, and let's just accept it as the gift that is available right here and now. Let's do it. All we have to do is do it. All we have to do is just be honest with each other. Let's just tell our stories and be honest with each other. And you'll find camaraderie and lovely community and grace and forgiveness and Anyway, I feel like we're probably getting towards the end, right?
I think so.
Yeah. All right. Well, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Amen.
Money, get back. I'm alright, Jack. Keep your hands off of my stack. Money, it's a hit. Don't give me that. Do good, good.